Joining us now is former U.S. Coast Guard officer and retired FBI Special Agent Greg Shaffer. He's the principal and chief operating officer for the Active Shooter Prevention Project. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. First, with what we know so far and your own background in active shooter prevention, what's your assessment of the events that led up to this terrible attack and the response?
Well, you know, Park Avenue is one of the most affluent addresses in the nation, or in the world even. And we've seen that the access control in the building seemed to be very good. But we've all seen that photograph of the shooter walking in what looks to be the middle of a courtyard, and in his right hand he's carrying an AR-15 in plain sight. Let's talk about prevention. Had the camera that caught that image had any artificial intelligence programs in that system, it would have picked up that firearm long before he entered the building. With the AI system in the camera, they get advanced notification that someone's in the courtyard, or somebody's approaching the building, or somebody is in the middle or outer perimeter of that building, approaching it with a deadly weapon. Then that notification could have been sent out to the security guard, to the police officer in the lobby, and to all the tenants of the building to shelter in place. So, you know, again, we need to get in front of these shootings and look at, and it's a big paradigm shift, we need to look at how to stop these before that first shot rings out. Everyone's talking about response and the police response, and how do we end these things? Well, how do we stop them from happening before the first shot rings out? And I think prevention with an AI system and cameras goes a long way to get that advanced notification, which is critical in these kind of incidents.
Digging into that a bit when it comes to, say, AI in camera systems, some, especially privacy advocates, would worry about privacy, where that's being collected, how that's being implemented. What would you say to those type of concerns?
Oh, it's definitely a slippery slope. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of putting cameras on every street corner. But in a courtyard like this building had, there's no expectation of privacy in that courtyard. And to have that AI in that the cameras are already there. So the invasion of privacy that people are concerned about, that already exists. All the AI does is it can help, again, notify those people in the building of a potential threat or a risk as it materializes real time. So I don't think that having AI in the camera is any further along the invasion of privacy scale that people are concerned about. And I think in this instance, it really would have saved those lives of those individuals that were shot and killed had an AI system been in place and been able to get the advanced notification to the building that he ultimately entered. Again, they have a really good inner perimeter access control security ring, but they got to expand that security ring out to both the middle and outer perimeters to get that advanced notification.
And Greg, when it comes to police perception, do you see this shooting changing the public perception of the police force in blue cities like New York, which have pulled funding from the police force in the past?
Well, as far as gun control goes, New York City's got one of the tightest gun control policies in the world, and yet he still gets his hand on an AR-15. So criminals don't obey the law; they never will. They never have done it, so they'll get their hands on weapons somehow. Again, the police response on this was great. They had a police officer in the lobby. Unfortunately, he was shot and killed. But again, that advanced notification, I think, would have notified that police officer that there was an individual approaching his building with an AR-15. That police officer could have then taken a position of cover and then engaged the shooter as he stepped in the front door. So I think we have a long way to go before we have that mindset change and that paradigm shift in how we think and how we approach these shootings in getting in front of the shooting, what we call left the bang. Let's focus on things that happen before the first shot rings out and not focus so much on the response and what happens after the first shot rings out. Because once that first shot goes off, people are dying.
And expanding on that a bit, there is the mayoral election coming up with surprise Democratic primary winner Zohran Mamdani sidestepping questions in a presser today about his past stances on defunding the police and disbanding the NYPD Strategic Response Group. That was the group that responded to the incident Monday night. What would you say a city should assess before making cuts to a law enforcement unit or disbanding it completely?
Yeah, I'm almost hesitant to even respond to that question because I think that Mamdani's policies and his thoughts on disbanding that individual police organization, police group, police division, as well as cutting funding for the police department. That is it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous, especially when you look at the crime rates that are happening in New York right now. So for any person to be able to say they want to cut the police force and cut their funding in a city such as New York during this time frame of increased violence, increased really the subway systems, the sidewalks, you can't walk at night. It's unconscionable that anybody running for public office would even make those kind of statements.
Now, another aspect here, Greg, is mental health. Many are pointing to the shooter's suicide note and his documented history of mental health concerns. Now, the Trump administration is actually aiming to shift more homeless and the mentally ill into institutions, which some say could play into that. How are you viewing this, the mental health aspect behind many shootings?
That's a great point. I think we do have a mental health crisis in this country right now. We don't have the institutions that we used to have decades ago that can hospitalize and treat these individuals. Again, one of the questions that was pointed out early in this show today was how did an individual with known mental issues become a security guard? Because I know in the state of Texas, to become a security guard, you have to take a psychological test. You can't be on certain medications, antidepressants or antipsychotics. How this individual became a security guard, would get a concealed weapon permit, I don't understand that. But on that note as well, yes, we do have a mental health crisis in America, and that needs to be looked at deeply, and we need to come up with some solutions on how to better address this mental health crisis and those that need assistance in their mental health.
Greg Shaffer, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.